Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sep, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sep, the NBA Finals has had a lot of heroes throughout the ages. You know, Willis Reed playing on the broken leg, Giannis gritting it out this year with being less than 100%, Devin Booker playing with a broken nose. And you can add somebody else to that list. Me, having just returned from the dentist from a root canal. Half my face is numb, but I love basketball in the NBA so much that I am going to be here on camera with half of my face paralyzed from Novocaine and a fat lip, and I will still be gritting it out through the show. So, Sap, I want to have the same respect that you would give Willis Reed and Giannis and Devin Booker. Is that fair to ask of you?
Absolutely, because just a week and a half ago, I had a temporary crown put in, and the Novocaine took a little while to wear off. So, yeah, it was the first time I tried to drink some water, I spit it up all over the place like Kramer and Seinfeld when he had the Novocaine. So, yeah, the fat lip is always a bit uncomfortable, but that'll wear off eventually. But I give you credit. You're a trooper.
Thank you. Yes, I will maybe abstain from trying to drink too much water during this show for fear of embarrassing myself. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm right there with Booker with the broken nose and Giannis with the bum knee. So I think if when the story of this NBA Finals is written, I think I deserve to be included for the heroic effort that this podcast is taking me.
Well, at least you've had 15 fewer turnovers than Chris Paul in the last 3 games, so there's that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack from the game, so let's just get right into it then, Sap. 109-103 is the final as the Bucks even it up at 2 games apiece. And really, there's a ton of subplots in this game, but the main story was the shootout between Khris Middleton and Devin Booker, who had really an all-time tit-for-tat game for the ages. Middleton ends up with 40 points. Devin Booker, 42. Middleton comes out on the winning side of it. It was by far the best game of the finals so far. And it was, in my opinion, one of the best games we've seen in the playoffs altogether, Sep. It was just a really exciting, quality basketball game.
It was, because there was a lot of ebbs and flows. It felt throughout the first 3 quarters that Phoenix was in control. They get up 9 early in the fourth quarter, and then their offense just bogged down, or Milwaukee's defense intensity just increased. Probably a little bit of both. Booker was sensational. Middleton was sensational. It's the first time since 2001 when opposing players have each scored 40 in the same finals game. The last time that happened was Shaq and Iverson back in the 2001 finals. You wouldn't normally think of Booker and Middleton with Shaq and Iverson, but I think Booker eventually is going to be a Hall of Fame type player. Middleton has really availed himself quite well in this postseason. He's had some down games, but he's always managed to bounce back. Remember last week we were talking about in the previous 2 series in games 1 and 2, he averaged 15 per game, but once it gets to game 3 and beyond, he's averaged 28. Well, we saw that last night in game 4, and Milwaukee needed him to do that because Drew Holiday continues to struggle from the field. He was 4 for 20. Giannis, I think, had a really good all-around game. I mean, he wasn't scoring at the level he was in games 2 and 3, but he rebounded, he passed, and oh boy, did he play defense. Of course, that memorable block of DeAndre Ayton, which would have tied that game up with a little over a minute left in the contest. Just a sensational block by Giannis. I tweeted out afterwards, he defended the alley and the oop all in one motion. That's how he is.
Very solid tweet.
Thank you. And I'm trying to think about other players in the league that could pull that off. I think LeBron 5 years ago could have pulled it off.
Yeah, not now.
Necessarily now. No, he's 36. The reflexes aren't quite as good. The recovery speed.
Robert Williams.
Oh, God.
Robert Williams, the Time Lord. He could do it, Sap.
Yeah, well, chances are he wouldn't be on the floor because he's always hurt.
That's accurate.
I'm not going to put him out there. You got to be on the court to make that play. There's just not a lot of guys. I mean, Kawhi maybe, but Kawhi's just not as big and long as Giannis, right? And Giannis, the thing about him is his motor, right? I mean, for a superstar player, we know a lot of superstar players at times they kind of coast, right? You don't see Giannis coasting much because, again, his background and how he got to the league is different than the other great players. I mean, we heard about LeBron in high school, all these players that are sensational. Kevin Durant, we saw at Texas. We knew he was going to be sensational. I mean, Giannis was the 15th pick in the first round, and all we knew was he was selling watches on the streets in Athens and somehow was discovered by NBA scouts and was drafted 15th by the Bucks as a project, scored 7 points per game in his first year. So I think he still plays with the mentality of a guy who's still trying to prove himself. And I've said it a million times, I think he's a giant version of Russell Westbrook, just a phenomenal athlete that his motor's always going. So that was a sensational block. But back to the two stars of the game, yeah, Booker and Middleton were just outstanding. And you got to give those guys credit because they were coming off of less than stellar games earlier in the series, but they had the wherewithal to play really great last night. And, I think if Middleton and Booker cross each other off, chances are that's going to benefit Milwaukee. Because right now I trust Giannis scoring more than I do Chris Paul, who was really struggling the last two games of this series, whether it be because of injuries or just really good defense by the Milwaukee Bucks. Jed, I just want to throw this stat out to you. In the first 15 playoff games this year, Chris Paul had a grand total of 24 turnovers, which is an average of 1.6 per game. In the last three games, he's turned the ball over 15 times, which is 5 turnovers per game. His turnover rate has gone up threefold in the last 3 games. And the thing that's always made Chris Paul a phenomenal player, an all-time great, is he doesn't turn the ball over. It's like Aaron Rodgers at quarterback doesn't throw interceptions. Chris Paul doesn't turn it over, but the last 3 games he has, and that's been a huge component in this series turning around and now being even 2 games apiece.
Yeah, and a lot of credit goes to the Bucks defense and Drew Holiday, who's been checking him a lot. I mean, Drew Holiday wasn't really effective offensively last night. In fact, he was pretty dreadful, 4 of 20 from the floor, 0 of 5 from 3. But he did a nice job defensively on Chris Paul, and the Bucks after game 1 have really concentrated more on not letting Chris Paul beat them. And it's worked to the tune of they won 2 of the last 3 after Chris Paul had that huge game 1. So, yeah,
too, Jet. I got to give you credit on that. Maybe, Coach Bud was listening because you said it after game 1 that you've got to do something different against Chris Paul. You can't make him comfortable. Chris Paul to me is so similar to an NFL quarterback. If you let a great quarterback drop back in the pocket and never pressure him and let him throw from wherever he wants to, he's going to pick you apart, whether it's Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, Russell Wilson, pick any of the great quarterbacks. Same thing with Chris Paul. He was having his way in the first game, a little less in the second game, but Phoenix was able to win that game. That was the Mikal Bridges game where he was just sensational. Right. So he was so comfortable. Well, you have to make him uncomfortable, whether it be picking him up full court, which is what Drew Holiday has done. Be physical with him. I mean, Drew Holiday is 6'4", 210, 215 pounds. He's a big point guard. In fact, it seems like Milwaukee, their roster, every player on the court seems to be big for their position, don't they? I mean, Brook Lopez is a house. Giannis is
they're a big team. They're big and long, and they have been for a while. I mean, this is the way they play.
PJ Tucker's 6'5", 260. Looks like an NFL tight end. I mean, even Connaughton, who I think is one of the best athletes on the floor, the guy was drafted in the first round of Major League Baseball. He's a big physical guard, if you will. So they're a physical team. Phoenix is a finesse team. So if you're Milwaukee, impose your will, be Phoenix, be physical against Phoenix, which you're able to do on your home court. Maybe it doesn't happen that way in Phoenix because of the whistles.
Yeah, you've seen the home court have an advantage, obviously, in this series, in that the teams have been able to play more their style on their home court, which makes sense. You're more comfortable at home. Yeah, the whistles, as you mentioned, the crowd giving you a lift. So, yeah, you've seen the style sort of imposed on each respective team's home floor. So, another note about Middleton, and I think you alluded to this a little bit in the last podcast, is it's almost strange that what you pointed out about why it takes him a couple of games to get going, because you look at guys like LeBron or Chris Paul as sort of like those analytical players. Okay, maybe they're sort of feeling it out the game, like a chess master, seeing what the other team is doing. Middleton's just like a pure scorer and shooter. So it doesn't really make sense why it takes him so long to get going. I mean, obviously it worked like gangbusters for Milwaukee last night. He was arguably the best player on the floor, but you would think with a guy whose game is pretty much pull up jump shots, why is it taking him 4 games to get going?
Yeah, I mean, I've compared him to a shorter poor man's version of Kevin Durant. Now, that's not a knock against him. If that's what the description is, that means you're making a lot of money in the NBA and you're an all-star, which Khris Middleton is, a two-time all-star. But yet it is kind of mystifying because he can score at all different levels too, Jet. It's not like he's predominantly a perimeter shooter. Like, he's got a nice three-point game. He's got a nice mid-range game. He can get to the basket, can score in transition. He can score in multiple ways. So
but he's just asked to do that, Sap. Just score. He's not asked to do a lot of other stuff.
No, I mean, he's a decent rebounder. He can facilitate. He plays solid defense. But yeah, his primary goal is to go out and get 20, 25 points a night. And you see these incredible ebbs and flows with him, though, right? I mean, you're talking about he's had some huge games in the playoffs where you're like, wow, where'd this guy come from? And then he's had other games where, like, he's 5 for 23 from the floor. Like, that's not good. Like, again, that's why he's a third level star, right? He's made a couple of all-star games because he was the second best player on a team with the best record in the league, which normally gets you to an all-star game. If it's Khris Middleton playing on a middle-of-the-road team, he probably wouldn't make the all-star team unless he put up huge numbers because he was the number one option. But yeah, it is kind of strange that it takes him this long to get going. Those two previous series, which were, 13 total games 1 and 2, he averaged 15 per game. Games 3 through 7, which, totaled 9 games, he averaged 28. So I'd rather have that, right? So as the series unfolds, he seems to start cooking later in the series. Ideally, you'd like the guy to, go out and get 28 every game, but then he would be a superstar, not a third level star. So yeah, pretty amazing. And that's why this series interesting, Jet, because you have a lot of guys kind of like that, right? I mean, this isn't Lakers Celtics of the 80s where you had, Bird and Magic and McHale and Parrish and Worthy. I mean, like, you had 6 first ballot Hall of Famers, not to mention the likes of Dennis Johnson and Jamal Wilkes and whoever coming off the bench. So, you had guys that were just consistent, great players. Here, you have Giannis, who's been consistent throughout the series. Heck, Chris Paul has been up and down in this series, and he's obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's why this series is interesting, because there's a lot of variances here, none more so than Khris Middleton.
Yeah, and Giannis is sort of the only one in this series you expect to consistently put up the same sort of numbers every night, because that's what he's done, since he's established himself as a star player in the NBA. I mean, he's remarkable. We've gone over this multiple times in the postseason. He's remarkably consistent. I mean, you can almost pencil him in for the same numbers every single night. But with Middleton and Booker last night, too, they deserve a lot of credit for it. They weren't just scoring, in volume. They were hitting clutch shots. Yeah. I mean, really huge shots. And Middleton is overshadowing Booker tonight because the Bucks won the game. But they were trading big baskets back and forth. I mean, the two to the point where neither team was looking at anybody else at the end of the game. They were just saying, hey, okay, Devin, on this side, you get your bucket. Middleton, on this side, you get your bucket. I mean, it was almost like a clear out one-on-one game towards the end of it.
That's why the block by Giannis of the potential game-tying dunk by DeAndre Ayton is even more amazing, because you would just assume in that situation, because the ball was in Devin Booker's hands, that he was going to take the shot. But Giannis was able to switch off quickly off of Booker and get back to block that shot. That makes that play even more remarkable, to try to defend against a guy who's got a hot hand, and then all in one split second understand that now it's a lob pass, let me go back there and block the 7-footer. Just a remarkable play. But yeah, both of those guys were on fire, and I like both of those guys because they both can score in so many different ways. Again, they can beat you from deep, they can beat you from the mid-range, they can also get the ball to the basket. So we'll see what happens in game 5. Phoenix is going to need Booker to continue at this level, because right now Chris Paul's not playing well. DeAndre Ayton's rebounding well, but he only scored 6 points last night. The Suns are not going to win the title with Chris Paul scoring 10 points and DeAndre Ayton scoring 6. I mean, Booker had 42 last night, Jet. The other 4 starters only had 38. They need more help from those guys. They don't have a very deep bench. I'd like to see more of Cam Payne and Cam Johnson. I think both of those guys have played well. I just want to run this by you, because Chris Paul is somewhat getting beat up here by Drew Holiday. The sheer difference in size and the way Holiday's playing physical and being allowed to play physical. Could you see them at some point, not necessarily starting the game, but at some point going out with Cam Payne, Chris Paul in the backcourt, and go with, say, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and then pick one of the other wing guys, whether it be Jay Crowder or Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson, and running that lineup for a little bit, take the ball handling duties away from Chris Paul, which sounds crazy, but may be beneficial to them, especially bringing the ball up the court. Maybe you get the ball to Chris Paul in the front court so he's not, getting beat up by Jrue Holiday. Maybe you try to do that to throw a wrinkle at Milwaukee, because that's all this series is, right? These 7-game series is all about adjustments, and give Budenholzer credit. Oftentimes he's slow to make adjustments, but he must have been listening to you a week ago when you said, you got to make Chris Paul uncomfortable, because that's what the Bucks have done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very, very brilliant basketball mind,
Yes.
Sep. So, I mean, I would assume he is listening to me. But yeah, I mean, I think when you lose 2 in a row in a playoff series, yeah, nothing's off limits. You got to figure something out. They can't continue to do the same thing they've done these past 2 games, because then they'll assuredly lose the series.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to saying, try out different lineups, and if you want to play campaign a little bit more, I think DeAndre Ayton needs to be more of a focal point of their offense, and him taking 9 shots is just not enough. I know he wasn't particularly efficient; he only hit 3 of them, but I'd like to see him shoot the ball more. I think that they're going to need, especially if Chris Paul is off, they're going to need more scoring punch from Ayton, who's capable of it. I just don't think 9 shots is enough for him.
No. I'm so proud of my comparison to Robert Parrish, because even like last night, that was like a Robert Parrish playoff game, 17 rebounds, but only 6 points. Parrish did that oftentimes with the Celtics, but let's not forget, Robert Parrish was playing with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and Dennis Johnson.
It's nice
so they
to
could
have
win with him getting 6 points. Exactly. DeAndre Ayton has to get closer to 20 points for this team to win, as does Chris Paul, because can you expect Devin Booker to go out and get 40 each of the next 2 or 3 games? I mean, he's capable of it, but you don't want to put that type of pressure on him, because you also need him to do some other things, play defense on the other end. And Booker can be a good facilitator. Maybe if they want to get the ball out of Chris Paul's hands early in the game, maybe Booker initiates the offense, and you kind of, throw a few wrinkles out there against Milwaukee, because, again, all those adjustments have to be made. And, there's 3 days between games. So or 72 hours is the best way to put it, between games. We're not playing again until Saturday, and then game 6 is Tuesday. And if this goes to 7, then Thursday. So there's plenty of time to make adjustments. There's plenty of time to get rest. And I think you're going to need DeAndre Ayton to play more minutes going forward as well, because they don't have a backup center. I mean,
No.
Saric is not a great player, but losing him is really hurt the Phoenix Suns, because he'll give you 12, 14 quality minutes a night to allow Ayton to go to the bench. They need Ayton to play, 42, 44 minutes, which is a tough ask for a big guy, but he's also 22 years old. He should be able to handle it.
Right, and it's the NBA Finals, so you can't leave anything left in the tank. Sep, just again quickly on Middleton and Booker, more so Booker. What changed in this game to really enable him to put up such a monster scoring game? Is it as simple as, like Doc Rivers likes to say, to make Miss League, or was he doing something different in your estimation?
I think the big thing with him is if he can get some easy looks, maybe going to the basket, and we always hear that the scorers, once they see the ball go through the basket and you see 2 points being put up or 3 points being put up, that the confidence level goes up. I mean, I remember Ray Allen, who I compared Devin Booker to, oftentimes would say that, like, just if I get a bucket early, even if it's on a drive, even if it's going to the free throw line and connecting early, that, my confidence goes up, and that kind of impacts the rest of your game. And I think Booker was able to do that. And then he came out in the third quarter. He had a monster third, right? He scored 18. I mean, this is like a series we're regularly seeing guys score like 18, 20 points in a quarter, which you just don't see. I mean, that's crazy in the NBA Finals. But I think that's what it is. If he can get a couple of easy looks, get to the basket, it's going to help him. Also, Milwaukee's best perimeter defender is Jrue Holiday. So when you have Holiday on Chris Paul, now you're not having as good a defender on Devin Booker. So Booker should be able to score against, whether it's Middleton, or at times they've had PJ Tucker on him, which there's no way in hell PJ Tucker can check Devin Booker. I mean, we're talking about an elite athlete in his prime against a guy who's a blue collar grinder in PJ Tucker. I think Tucker would have more success trying to guard Durant, because he can get under his grill and be physical with him. Booker is a thoroughbred. PJ Tucker's not going to check him. So I think it has a lot to do with that. And Milwaukee's made, I think, as you said earlier in the series, the right decision that we have to contain Chris Paul. We've got to cut the head of the snake off, and the head of the snake is Chris Paul. If Devin Booker goes out and gets 42, we'll hope that Chris Paul has an off night, which he had last night, and we hope that DeAndre Ayton has an off night, which he had last night, and it was enough for Milwaukee to win.
Yeah. By the way, I love PJ Tucker's stat line from last night. 29 minutes, 0 for 1 from the floor,
Yep.
so no points. 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 5 fouls. That's a perfect PJ Tucker stat line that describes him
Yep.
as a player so well. He is in purely for defense, not
Yep.
shooting,
Nope.
and giving all the fouls he has. It's like,
And setting picks, right? I mean, he'll set some nice picks for Middleton.
that's what he's in for.
That's all. You know what? And sometimes less is more. Like, you don't need him taking shots. I mean, the only shot he really ever takes is the corner three, and if that's not available, what else is he going to do? But
I believe that was the one shot he took last night. It was one shot was a 3.
That's all he ever takes. I mean, I love the guy because he seems, first of all, like a really cool guy. And look, these two teams have a lot of players that you easily root for. I mean, how can't you root for Giannis? I mean, even if after the game he's talking about why he needed a short break in the last 2 games to go take a tinkle. Oh my God, that was so great. I mean, how can you like that kid? And I know Chris Paul is an acquired taste, and a lot of people don't like him. I love him. I think he's incredibly smart, great leader. What he's done for the league, I think he's eventually going to be a GM, a coach, maybe a part owner. And I just think he's a genius caliber player. I don't like the way he's played the last 2 games, and I just hope it's not another case of Chris Paul melting down in the playoffs, because he's had a history of this. And now it's a 3-game series. He's going to have to step up, because I don't think the Suns are going to win with him playing like he played last night.
Right. So, Sap, is it a matter of there's a couple options here. Is he melting down? Is age and fatigue setting in, or have the Bucks found something that's working against him? And because it's got to be one of those things.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, I think Middleton, we know, is an elite defender, right? I mean, he's first team all defensive NBA. He's a Holiday. Middleton's also a good defender, but
good.
Holiday,
Yeah, he's good.
Good, but Drew Holiday. I mean, that's why Drew Holiday is one of your probably 5 or 10 favorite players in the league. I mean,
he's one of the best defensive guards in the league for sure,
without question. I mean, the thing I admire about Holiday is he goes 4 for 20 from the floor, and he still contributes on the defensive end. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And he's big. Jet, he's 5 inches taller than Chris Paul and probably 25 pounds heavier. He's a physical guy, and if he's allowed to play that way, that's going to wear younger, and that's going to wear on a 36-year-old guy. Chris Paul is not in his prime physically. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, who is at 36? Heck, even LeBron's not in his prime at 36, and he's one of the most.
Tom Brady.
Yeah, well, that's a different position. I mean, you can't touch him, and now we're hearing Brady played last year with a torn MCL. I mean, it gets ridiculous by the day in terms of like, okay, we get it, Tom. You're the greatest player ever. You don't have to pile on and tell us, was he also blind in his left eye in the Super Bowl? That's probably what was the case. But so that is obviously part of it. So now I think when you get back to Phoenix, then maybe Milwaukee can't be as physical with him as they've been in Milwaukee. I also think when we saw Scott Foster on the court for Game 3, that just got in his head. And I don't know, did that carry over into Game 4? I would hope not. I mean, this is a veteran of 16 years. Right. He can't let that bother him. But again, when you're at a genius level as a player, like Chris Paul, LeBron James, Magic, Bird, Bill Russell, those are like the first 5 guys that come to mind. Sometimes you overthink the situation. Now, I think Bird and Russell didn't necessarily overthink the situation. I know LeBron overthinks situations, and there have been times when Magic overthought situations. Just go back and watch the 1984 finals. Many times he overthought the situation, and it hurt his Laker team. So maybe that's the case. I mean, look, if we get to Game 5 and Mark Davis, who is pretty good friend, or at least has a good relationship with Chris Paul, if Mark Davis is officiating that game, then bet your house on the Suns, because Chris Paul will probably have a great game. But that's not a good look for the league either, right? Like, it's like,
no, but
Scott
he can't.
Foster's,
Scott Foster's officiating. But he might ref again this series, Sap. He might.
He may. I mean, could you see Scott Foster in Game 7? I mean, how much money are people going to be betting on the Milwaukee Bucks at that point, knowing that Chris Paul's lost 12 straight postseason games with Scott Foster officiating his game? That's got to be the craziest stat I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it is wild. Like, I mean, Scott Foster, we both agree, has no business refereeing in the finals. But I mean, he
shouldn't be in the arena yet, let alone.
But Chris Paul can't let it affect him that much. He just can't. No. He's got to be able to move past it.
These great players, though, Jet, the really smart ones, it's almost like it's paralysis by analysis. You know who also was like that? Peyton Manning at times was like that. It was almost like he'd get to the line of scrimmage, and it would be like sensory overload. Like, instead of just kind of focusing on what's going to work, you're never going to like
Omaha.
Yeah, Omaha. I was thinking more the stakes than the city in Nebraska, but like Brett Favre would never be accused of sensory overload. Like, because
No.
Brett Favre didn't even know how to read defenses. Really, he didn't know his first few years in the league what a nickelback was. Probably thought it was the rock group Nickelback or whatever their pop group.
He was a grip it and rip it. That was Brett Favre's
Pretty
mentality.
much, yeah. And that's something that happens with Aaron Rodgers, too. Sometimes he gets to the line of scrimmage and it turns into the New York Times crossword puzzle for him. He's having fun. He wants to prove he's the smartest guy on the field. And in the end, it doesn't necessarily help you win the game. So I think sometimes with Chris Paul, he's like over analytical, like sometimes just go play, screw it. I mean, I think that's when LeBron's been at his best, like just go play. That's why you see LeBron, most of his game winning shots, if not all of them, come when the ball's just inbounded to him and he has no choice but to shoot it. He makes it when there's like 18 seconds on the shot clock and he has the ball in his hand. Sometimes he overthinks the situation and passes it up to Kyle Korver or someone else. When there's only 3 seconds left, it's like catch, make a move, shoot. I got no choice. And he ends up hitting them. So I think Chris Paul is that type of player. So let's hope, in fact, for someone that's rooting for Phoenix, that's not the case. But it's been a fun series. And look, even when it was 2-0, we both said this thing's going 6 or 7. I mean, because neither team is great enough to just sweep the other. I don't think that's really in the equation.
Or have 1 in 5 games. I mean, it's just it was
right.
Not in the card.
No, these teams are pretty even. I mean, Giannis is clearly the best player. We get that. And then, if you start power ranking the next guys, you got 3 guys from Phoenix and 2 guys from Milwaukee. You got some nice bench pieces. Players like Mikal Bridges, one night look spectacular, one night look awful. Jay Crowder is a streaky shooter. We get all that. I like Campaign and Cam Johnson. I'm starting to really like Cam Johnson. The more I watch this kid, does he ever miss? I mean, it's just like
good.
He always
he's
makes
very
good plays.
He's going to make himself some money for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, he's becoming a more quality player. But Phoenix has a bunch of good young players. That's why they're an interesting team, because they have a mix of these really talented young guys, but they also have some established veterans like Crowder, obviously Paul. They're an interesting team. I mean, it's a very well constructed team. Other than you can knock them for not having a lot of bench depth. But I mean, at some point, like, you can't have you're not the dream team. You can't have everything.
Right. Maybe they should have been in on Andre Drummond. I'm just thinking of where they could have got a decent backup center for DeAndre.
Yeah, but it seemed like he was dead set on the Lakers. I mean, I don't know.
No
what
one
you could
took
have
the
done
Suns
about
seriously.
that.
We didn't take the Suns seriously until they beat the Lakers, and it was like,
that's
pretty good. And the thing I like about Cam Johnson too is he's the guy. Remember the player from that got drafted by the Bulls and was speaking at his press conference, and they said that Cam Johnson was just drafted, and he goes,
Kobe White.
Wow. Kobe White. That was like one of my favorite moments of recent memory. And he was just so authentic. Wasn't that great? He was like, wow, that's great. Awesome. And it was Cam Johnson who he said he's the best shooter in college basketball, and he's just worked his ass off. So I love guys like that. And I want to see more of him. Like, maybe he's not the best defender. I get that, but the man can shoot. So maybe we'll see a little bit more of him. And Campaign always seems to bring in some energy, a little bit more speed than Chris Paul. So I trust Monty Williams to make the right adjustments. I got to hear his speech after the game, and he's so good, man. He's such a great coach because he knows what to say to the players the right way. He's not, Stan Van Gundy, like losing his voice and screaming at people to the point where, like, we don't want to play for this lunatic. He says it, but he does it in a manner where he's critiquing you, but he's not criticizing you, and then he's uplifting you. He gives like that compliment sandwich. Like, he starts it off with positivity.
Yeah.
Then he gets critical, and then he ends it with positivity. Like, we're going to get this done. Great coach. I thought he should have been coach of the year, and I thought 2 years ago that the Lakers should have hired him. And look, they won a title with Frank Vogel, but I would take Monty Williams over Frank Vogel.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody would. It's interesting with Cam Johnson and some of these guys who are excellent shooters in college. For whatever reason, it does seem to take them a while to get going in the NBA. Now, I would think, okay, you're a good shooter in college. Basketball's the same size. The dimensions of the court are a little bit different, but, you're still trying to put the ball in the hoop. And it does take them a while to get going. Remember, JJ Redick, for the first couple of years of his career, looked like he was going to be a washout in the league.
Good point.
And it really just seemed like he was done, but then he figured it out. And as far as other guys have gone, like Buddy Hield, he took some time too. So maybe it takes some time for these guys to figure out shooting. Sap, I wanted to also get to that block last night from Giannis, which was the play of the game in terms of how people are going to remember it. And I want to read to you a couple of tweets from Skip Bayless. I don't know if you saw my Twitter today.
I don't even have to have you read them. I can predict them. Actually, I saw, Skip and Shannon Undisputed. Yeah, go ahead, because I know exactly where we're going with this.
Here's the first tweet right after the block happened at 11:46 last night. That Giannis block of Ayton is being completely overrated. It was a lob. Giannis had plenty of time to go up and meet Ayton as he was catching the ball at its peak. He almost couldn't help but block it. Okay. Strong take that nobody agrees with, but okay, that was at 11:46.
Anybody could have blocked that, don't you know? Yeah, any guy in the league, yeah.
He couldn't have helped but block. He accidentally blocked it, basically.
He blocked it with his head.
11:46 last night. This morning, 9:57 a.m. Why Giannis's block is being so overrated, now on Undisputed. Okay, it's going to clearly stick with this dumb take. Let's see what he says next. 11:57 a.m. Giannis's block greater than LeBron's block, now on Undisputed.
Yeah, well, every block is greater.
What, he changed his mind in the span?
No, it's LeBron. I mean, come on, that block in the 2016 Finals, Game 7, was clearly overrated. I remember how many times Skip has said this, that it was a very easy block because J.R. Smith actually deserved more credit because he got to where Iguodala was going, and Iguodala had to kind of go underneath him to lay it in. I mean, LeBron only covered about 70 feet in about 2.5 seconds, and just timed it perfectly so it wasn't goaltending, and it was Game 7 tied up in a game where no one could score in the last 4 minutes because they were just gassed or gagging or whatever, and that led to a championship. But that wasn't a very impressive block by LeBron, nor an impressive block by Giannis. No, I mean, if Michael Jordan had done that, Skip would have needed to take some sort of medication to get his middle muscle to contract because he would have gone through the roof.
Sap, I took a screenshot of all three of those and I put them together and I tweeted it. I said, this is a professional troll in 3 tweets.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, that's why you almost have to respect it. It's like, it's such an over the top take. Like,
brilliant.
Everybody, he looks at what people are saying on Twitter.
Yep.
If somebody likes something, he does not like it. If they don't like it, he does like it. It's actually not that complicated what he does, but he's still the best at it.
He's by far the best at it. I mean, it's Trumpian, right? I mean, it's so perfect. It's like we all saw the block. Now, I mean, there's different degrees of how you want to rate that. The lob pass wasn't that great, and Ayton was kind of at his fingertips with it, and I don't even know if he would have completed the dunk. But look, the thing was 12 feet off the ground when Giannis blocked it, and he's blocking a pretty big, strong guy attempting to dunk the ball. But it wasn't like he was just standing with DeAndre Ayton when the ball was
switched
lobbed.
directions.
He was 12 feet away from the basket, trying to decide if he was going to contest a potential shot from a guy who ended up scoring 42 points, and all in a split second, he covered all that ground, changed directions, jumped off a leg, which looked like he blew out the ACL 2 weeks ago. Like, the whole thing was like, holy crap. And it came late in the game. I mean, Milwaukee was up 2 with 1:16 left. LeBron, when he had that block on Andre Iguodala 5 years ago, it was a tie game, Game 7 in the NBA Finals. And look, I think that's still the quintessential defensive play because it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals. This was Game 4. I mean, if Phoenix wins last night, this series is probably over, right? Because only LeBron and the Cavaliers have ever come back from 3 games to 1 down to win a championship in the finals. And I'm not saying if Ayton dunks that, now we've got a tie game. I don't know how it ends. Maybe Milwaukee wins anyway. So, but no, that was a spectacular block. I mean, come on. I mean, just
what was he doing? Sitting on his TV and he saw it and he was meh.
Well, because he doesn't like Giannis. If that was Kevin Durant, he would have went nuts. He loves Kevin Durant. He loves Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan's his all-time favorite athlete. I think if he got to meet I'm sure he met Michael Jordan because all he talks about is how he covered the Bulls in '98 as a columnist for the Tribune. And the thing is, if you like, I know Skip. I don't know him, but I know more of him as a writer. He is a phenomenal writer. Like, just read any of his stuff. It's incredible. He's a great writer. But he's understood that over the last 20 years, he makes a lot of money being Skip Bayless, professional troll, makes $6.5 million a year to say some crazy stuff. And he's got a perfect partner in my man Shannon Sharp, because Shannon will battle him, but it's in a good-natured way. And Shannon's also smart enough to know that he's making $4 million a year for sitting in a studio for a couple hours a day and going at it with Skip Bayless. It's great employment if you can get it.
Yeah. If you just listen to that show, Giannis's block was not impressive, and he's in bad shape, according to
right. In bad. Well, I think what Shannon did amend that, and I agree with him on this. I think that Giannis gets so excited that he hyperventilates. I don't think it's a conditioning issue. I think it's just that he really seems so excited to just be out there in a big moment that he's overexcited and he starts to hyperventilate. Like I said, I think Giannis needs to listen to some mellow music.
Yeah, but that's not a conditioning thing.
No. And I think Shannon should have not gone there. Obviously, look at Giannis. Does the guy look like he has like the perfect body? I mean, it's like he's lean. It's gigantic. Yeah. I mean, but again, when you're 6'11", no matter what type of shape you are, there are some not conditioning issues, but the motor is asked to do a lot when you're 6'11", 245 pounds.
No, it's true. It's true.
So that's part. I mean, that's why, like, I'm still amazed that Will Chamberlain died at 62. Like, that guy was probably the best conditioned athlete we've ever seen, and it kind of fell back that he had a heart ailment, which was tied to a tooth issue, and but it was like that guy looked like he could live forever. But the big guys don't necessarily last as long because you're asking the heart, the kidneys, the liver, all that stuff that like cover a bigger area. But no, Giannis is in great condition. But I do think he gets excited and hyperventilates. It's kind of like LeBron went through this back in a few finals where he was cramping up. I don't think it's choking. Apparently, if this happens, it's choking, according to Skip Bayless. If he doesn't like the guy, Michael Jordan also cramped up.
No, he didn't. No, never happened.
Yeah, right. Never happened. Yeah, he never missed a shot, and Kobe never missed a shot. So, but Skip is entertaining. If that, and look, the Fox Sports 1 is quite happy with he and Colin Cowherd because they're not getting great ratings, but as my good friend
Chris talking about it.
We're talking about Chris Villani had the funny line ever. He goes, I think more people hear their stuff on other shows than their own show because everybody plays their sound. Like nationally, like because it's so absurd. Some of it's like, or in the case of Colin Cowherd, I think he's just so wildly entertaining. Let's run it and riff off it. That's what we do in talk radio, right? You come back with a sound of somebody, and then you spend the segment analyzing what they said, having fun with it. So Fox Sports 1's kind of figured out that let Colin, let Nick Wright, let Skip Bayless say some crazy shit, and then at least it gets played on all the other networks. ESPN will run it, every radio station in the country will run it, and we'll have fun with it.
All right, Sap. Well, as my Novocaine is starting to wear off, let's get into our picks for the next game, which is on Saturday. Man, they really spread these things out. So it is Game 5, the pivotal Game 5, as they like to say. It is in Phoenix. The series obviously tied 2 games apiece. The bookmakers have it as Phoenix as a 4-point favorite. How do you see this one?
I think Phoenix is going to win comfortably. I think they'll get the benefit of the whistle. I think Chris Paul will step up and I don't think a spectacular game. I don't think he's going to do what he did in Game 6 against the Clippers or in Game 1 of this series. But I think Chris Paul will go out and get a 20-10 type game, limit the turnovers. Booker, is he going to get 42 in Game 5? Probably not, but I think with Chris Paul stepping up and DeAndre Ayton stepping up, that they'll have their big three intact, get the beneficial whistle. From what I understand, the games in Phoenix, the crowd is just insane. And also in Milwaukee. I mean, both of these are
great
fan bases. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about most of the people in the buildings have never been to NBA Finals. I mean, Milwaukee hasn't been to the finals since 74, and Phoenix hasn't been there since 93. So I'm like 85, 90, 95% of the crowd has never been to an NBA Finals. So this is like all uncharted territory for them. So they've been spectacular. I think Phoenix wins this game, I would say by double digits. I'll go like in the 117, 107 range, something like that.
I'll agree with you. I actually, Sap, last game, not only did I predict it correctly, I think we both did, but I had the points exactly. I said 6. It was 6. Yep. I hit it on the money. So if I had bet on it, I would have done well for myself, but I didn't. I agree with you because I think it's going to be as simple as this. Middleton's not going to play as well on the road. Paul will play better at home.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that complicated of an equation. So I agree with you. I think Phoenix will win relatively comfortably. I think Milwaukee will do the same. in Game 6, and I think Game 7, as they usually are, will be a complete toss-up. So we'll see how I feel about it then. But yeah, I agree with you, Sep. One more thing before we get out of here. I'm glad you mentioned the whistle disparity, because there was a play last night towards the end of the game that just was mind-boggling, that Devin Booker with 5 fouls should have fouled out of the game. The official did not call a blatant foul on him. Sap, a referee made a mistake, or they were not trying to foul out a star player?
They're trying to not foul out a star player. I mean, you work not to do that, but it was obviously his 6th foul. In fact, you can make a case now that Devin Booker is the first player in NBA history, NBA Finals history, with a 40.7 foul game, because that's what he really had last night. And
yeah, I do believe he actually did have another one that they didn't call.
He did, yeah. They finally called it on him. And look, Book is becoming a superstar in this league. So although if you're not getting called for your 6th foul, you've also been called for 5 other fouls. Normally, if you're a superstar in the league, you don't get to that point, right? Like Wilt Chamberlain never fouled out of a game, which doesn't make any sense. The biggest, strongest guy on the court never fouled out. So he obviously...
LeBron's fouled out like twice.
Yeah, I mean, they get superstar. Those guys are at another level. I mean, Booker's on the precipice of becoming a superstar. Those guys are like intergalactic superstars. It's like they're the face of the league. That was just the official going... Although, do you think it was that blatant a foul? I mean, it looked like he had most ball, but I think he fouled him more with his body. But here's the thing. It was against Drew Holiday, right, who is a very physical player. So, I mean, if Drew Holiday and the Bucks want to complain about that, then if you want to call the game, close, then he's not going to be able to guard Chris Paul the way he's guarded him the last 2 games. So, Drew Holiday...
they won, so they're not going to complain about it.
But if he's a physical... My point being, he's a physical defender, so that's, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just covering up for my new man crush in Devin Booker. But, he should have fouled out of the game, and eventually did, but, a little earlier on that call. It was just a weird game, wasn't it? I mean, it always felt like Phoenix was on the verge of blowing them out, but they never quite could. And then they scored 18 points over the final 11 minutes after scoring, 85 going into the third. I mean, they were really playing well for 3 quarters, but they never really built a big enough lead that they were comfortable.
No, and that's a very dangerous thing to do on the road. You got to put teams away if you're the road team.
Sloppy possession.
The 4th quarter was awesome. I mean, it was just a really fun 4th quarter. Yeah, it was the best game of the series by far. I mean, nothing has been. It hadn't been competitive in one, which happens. I mean, this happens in finals. Sometimes games end up being blowouts.
It happened in the 80s. I mean, go back. The 87 finals, the Lakers blew out the Celtics the first 2 games. The Celtics won handily in Game 3. I think Greg Kite had a huge game, believe it or not, off the bench. And then Game 4 was the magic hook shot. Game 5, the Celtics won handily. In Game 6, the Lakers won. It was like one good game in that series. That's why when people pine back, oh, my God, the 80s, which I think is still the greatest decade ever, because you had the league really getting into its prime, great players, the pace of play was fast. The 90s to me is just so boring. I know you probably liked it because it was physical.
Alone,
I know, that was really exciting basketball, like 79-75 finals, not 3rd quarter scores. So, but you saw this all the time. Because here's the thing: is like if it's not the Tour de France. So whether you lose by 2 or 22, it's a series, and you start the next game 0-0. And, it almost feels like, in tennis, when, like, say a player's up 5-1 in a set, like, what are you going to come back from? You expend all that energy to lose 6-4 in the set? Like, just,
part of it is pacing yourself, too. You got to know when to throw the white flag.
Right. Exactly. So that happens in the NBA in the series as well. I mean, baseball's different because there's no clock, and the hockey players don't know when to shut it off. That they're all crazy, and football is one game.
Done. Yeah.
So I mean, you've seen blowouts in Super Bowls, not so many recently, but you've seen that as well.
One last year. This past Super Bowl was a blowout.
Yeah. Keep rubbing it in, because that should have been the Packers in that game.
Yeah, it wasn't though.
No, it wasn't.
Seth, last question I want to ask you, and this just came into my mind because we've now crossed over the halfway point of what would be a 7-game series if it does go the distance. Who is your finals MVP through 4 games?
Oh, it's Giannis. I mean,
I think that's a no-brainer, right?
That's
I
a
don't know how you
no-brainer.
could have anybody else.
I wonder if Giannis continues to play at this level, say has another 40-point game and a 20-rebound game and plays his ass off and makes another crazy block in game 6, the fourth game, whatever. Like, could he win the finals MVP with his team losing? Because it's only happened once. It was Jerry West in 1970. You could make the case in 2015, LeBron could have been the MVP of the series, but that only wins 6 games. I think it has to go 7.
Definitely.
For a losing player to win the MVP. That could be on the table because Booker had a horrible game 3. Chris Paul's had really bad games 3 and 4. Ayton scored 6 last night. Like, if Phoenix wins, that's going to be really a team effort, right? And that could happen.
Give it to Monty Williams.
Yeah, why not? I just give it to Monty Williams as the finals MVP. But that could be, I mean, if obviously Milwaukee wins, it's Giannis. He's just been sensational. But if it goes 7 and it's a close game 7 and somehow Phoenix wins and Giannis averages, I don't know, 34, 15, 7 assists. He seems to get like 2 or 3 blocks and 2
on
or 3
table.
steals.
Yep, on the table.
It's definitely going to be on the table. And that, I mean, man, that heightens your legacy. Like, the guy was so good that he won a finals MVP on a losing team. But man, these two teams, this is urgent because I don't know when these teams are going back there. I mean,
especially Chris Paul.
Yeah, I mean, he's 16 years in the league. I mean, it's a wonderful story, but the West is going to be loaded next year. If LA's healthy and they add a few pieces, which I think they will, look out for them. I don't know about the Clippers because we don't know what the hell Kawhi is going to miss any time or maybe be playing on another team. But you get my point. The West is still pretty damn deep.
Denver should be back
there. Denver's
Golden
strong.
State.
Utah's good. Golden State. Yeah, I mean, you got some teams that could make some additions that will put them right there with Phoenix. And in the East, I mean, we all agree if Brooklyn's healthy and focused, they're the favorites. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we'll see Milwaukee and Phoenix back in there. And so it's there for the taking. It's right there. So there's a lot of pressure on Chris Paul and Giannis. This is their
and
time.
You can look at them right now, Sap, and say Chris Paul has left something, in the tank right now, and he hasn't played up to his ability. And Giannis has done everything he humanly can to win every game in this series.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Paul, there were times last night that late in the game when they're down 2 and he does the crossover, he actually kind of palmed the ball on his left hand and he just kind of fell and lost it.
Yeah,
he looked old.
Yeah, that was bad.
Didn't he just look old there? Like, okay, I'm the old guy playing with the young kids and I still got the brain, the heart, but sometimes the legs don't work.
No, after game 1, it looked like he was just, eye of the tiger, man on a mission.
Yeah.
Like he was not going to let his team lose. And Giannis has availed himself extremely well in this final stuff. I mean, he's proven a point, it seems like.
Jet, if they win, and he's the MVP of this series, which I think they go hand in hand, he could make a claim of being the best player in the world. And I still, in my heart and soul, think LeBron is technically the greatest player until he starts to lose it. But you're a 2-time regular season MVP. You drag a team that's good, not great, to a championship, and then you're the finals MVP. And, oh, by the way, in the previous series, it looked like you blew your knee out and you came back and played better than ever. He can make that claim. Because from the technical standpoint, we're talking about a guy who was also Defensive Player of the Year last year.
And they did knock off Brooklyn. Granted, they were injured, but they were the favorites, and they knocked them off.
And Kevin Durant was otherworldly in that series, right? I mean, can you do much more than Kevin Durant did? I mean, I don't know. No. I watched them for 7 games. The guy was ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, so he could lay claim to that. That's kind of a somewhat of an existential discussion.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of stuff on the line here.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line. I mean, Durant is right there too, and LeBron. Those are probably the 3 guys. Kawhi, I always put up there, but he's not reliable. And Steph, look, as great as Steph is, he's a liability on the defensive end. So those would be the 3 guys that would be in discussion. And the thing is, one guy is in his physical prime and is making plays on the defensive end that are like, as Michael Wilbon said after the game last night, it looked like something out of the archives of Bill Russell. Like I could see Bill Russell probably did that on a nightly basis back in the 50s and 60s. So he could lay claim for that, which I think would
do something that Durant can't say, which is he took and not only taking a good to, pretty good, very good team and being the clear guy on the team. I mean, Durant had Curry and Thompson and Green. Like, Giannis doesn't have that at all.
No, this would be Kawhi 2 years ago, right? Taking Toronto to the championship because you had nice pieces and all of that. It's kind of fun. I mean, me being a LeBron fan, you would think I love the super teams, which I do. I think it makes the league that more enjoyable to watch. I mean, because now you have a hero, a villain, that type of thing. But it'd be pretty cool that, two of the last three champions are going to be teams that, weren't just brought together by 3 or 4 players and weren't considered super teams with all-time great players. I mean, Toronto's team, you had Kawhi, who's a Hall of Famer. I mean, Kyle Lowry maybe gets in the Hall of Fame since everybody does in the NBA, and Marc Gasol probably gets in down the road, but they weren't necessarily in their athletic primes, those guys. You know what I mean?
No.
And the same thing here I don't think Khris Middleton's a Hall of Famer or Jrue Holiday. Now, who knows if Middleton plays 3 or 4 more years, goes to a couple All-Star games, more All-Star games, and wins this championship, maybe his resume is enough. We know the difference between, like you've said it before, there's the Hall of Fame, then there's the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Every, like Ben Wallace, I think belongs in the Hall of Fame, but he's not a.
Well, even Sap, I know the difference between, good for Khris Middleton. He's excellent. I know the difference between Khris Middleton and Klay Thompson.
Yes. One guy's better. Yeah, absolutely. And I know the difference between.
And Klay Thompson was the third best player on that team.
Right. Yeah. And look, PJ Tucker is a nice player, but Draymond Green's better, right?
Yeah, it's a better version of him.
Way better. And Khris Middleton's a player we both love, but Steph Curry, come on. I mean, that was ready made. This is legacy stuff for Giannis. Or as I've learned now, the correct pronunciation of his name is Giannis. And I learned that from my good friend Giannis. It's like Y-A Nice, Giannis. Okay. Because I learned that from John Saranitis, my good friend who's Greek. And I texted him this morning and said, is the correct pronunciation of Giannis Giannis? And he said, absolutely. So Giannis.
Well, that will never catch on in the United States. It's too late. The ship has sailed.
No. Way too late. All right.
Yeah, it's too late, Sap. Some Americans don't like to change. That's why we don't use the metric system.
We haven't embraced soccer really as much as we thought we would.
And never will. All right, Sap, that's going to do it for us. So the next game, again, is on Saturday. We'll be back to react to that. And we may have another podcast in store for tomorrow talking about other stuff that's going on outside finals because there's plenty of news going on in the basketball world.
Yep.
So we will talk to you then. Again, we are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out our Twitters for all the latest on the show at JohnSap25. That's JOHNSAP25 or JOHN.
JOHN. I'm not.
I got it.
I'm not sophisticated. I'm just a regular man.
I got it right. And Jet Stryer on Twitter. And find the podcast where our podcasts are found. So we will talk to you later and see you, everybody.